my great pleasure to introduce Maarten Simons, and to chair the session. I've known Maarten for many years. I've had good fortune to go to Leuven on so many occasions. You know, I'm sure you know what the creative place, Maarten being a huge part of that. So delighted to introduce Maarten.
Ian, sorry, there is a bit of a problem with the sound. It's moving a little bit, so maybe if you might a little bit closer.
Oh, right.
And you can speak slower too.
Speak slow. Oh, all right, okay. Very sorry for this stuff. So, Maarten is a full professor in the Faculty of Psychology and Educational Sciences at Leuven, and is also Vice Dean of Education. He has a number of strings to his bow, as I'm sure some of you know, including educational policy analysis, discourse analysis, governmentality, philosophy of education, educational theory, and globalization. And ultimately, I think Maarten's work sits at the crossroads of policy analysis and philosophy of education. So, Maarten's been involved in a number of research projects over the years in areas such as emancipation, educational policy and commercial relationships, and the accountability regime in Ecuadorian education. So he's done some incredibly interesting, wide-ranging things. He has over 130 publications to his name, so taking a deep breath. I'm not going to go through all our publications. We'll be a bit late next starting up to. And yes, many of these collaborating with colleagues in Leuven and others too. So some of the perhaps most notable publications to mention include his books with long-time collaborator Jan Masquelet, and these include Roncière, Public Education and the Taming of Democracy, In Defense of the School, a public issue. This is a book adored by a number of my students. I know, talking to people here, others have found the same thing. And the follow-up to that, which I think came out last year, called Looking After School, a critical analysis of personalisation. What we'll be talking about today connects up to and draws upon that recent book. So yes, as I say, it's wonderful to have Maarten here. Take us away, Maarten.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Can you hear me? Is it okay? Okay. Thank you for the invitation. So thank you, Ian, for the introduction. Finding out things I didn't know about myself. Thank you for that. Always nice.
Yeah, the orientation wasn't true.
So as Ian mentioned, so I collaborated a lot with Jan Masquelet, and also the work I'm going to present now as part of that collaboration, so I just want to mention that. And yeah, today I would like to talk about the issue of personalization, and often the issues I try to address combine a kind of theoretical challenge as well as a practical challenge. So the theoretical challenge is really, there is something going on, and I try to use this notion of personalization in order to name what is going on and to find out what really marks the difference with how we used to organize education or not. So for me, that's really a theoretical challenge, to try to find out and try to make distinctions that in one way or another help us to get a grip on what's going on in this matter of personalization. On the other hand, there is also a really practical challenge. Me as a teacher, and also as a policymaker, that personalization is challenging what I'm doing. When students address me as a person, and I'm not addressing them as a person, there is a real tension. I have to come to terms with. I'm not saying that I will present a solution now, but I'm just indicating that for me, this philosophical research and policy studies is always in one way or another, starting from the limits I'm facing both my teaching and philosophy. So I will be reading the paper. It's a reduced version, so I have to cut things. I hope it still works. So it's not too much. It's difficult not to take learning personally today. Personalized learning, the personalization of education is high on the agenda in diverse contexts. And two things stand out in this omnipresence of personalized learning. First, the emphasis is on freedom and liberation. Putting the personal learner at the center is argued to be tantamount to freeing the students from all sorts of norms, standards, and organizational forms that limit and make real learning impossible. Underlying this move is a kind of liberation pedagogy that assumes that the personal learner, with her unique needs and aspirations, will finally appear and flourish when educational institutions are losing their grip on students. Secondly, one cannot fail to notice that the school is constantly under discussion. The school is represented as an outdated institution for education, with outdated technologies that are built around teaching and curriculum, but do not start from the personal students. I think the corona pandemic even allowed schools to be completely ignored for at least a while. Personalized learning its own became the norm, and school education, just like every other service, became a kind of home delivery. Now, the double ambition of this my contribution today reflects these two observations. The first one to argue that the personal learner, and her claim to uniqueness and recognition, is the result of a new or a very specific power configuration. And I will use the term personalization precisely to articulate the key mechanism of this new power configuration. Then, in the second part of this contribution, I reintroduce the term school. Not so much to refer to the kind of social institution or building that we know all very well, but and also not as a really theoretical concept, but school as a polemic concept. Like an analogy with concierge usually to democracy, we describe school as an event, a very specific mode of learning. Learning under the assumption of freedom and equality. So that's one of the target of the school is kind of learning or enables a kind of learning under the assumption of freedom and equality. It's a mode of learning that is using the concept of concierge, scandalous for everyone who wants to regulate or control learning by imposing limits to freedom and thought. So let's start with saying a few things about this personalization. I think there is no single actor, policy, or theory that argues in favor of putting the personal student at the center of education. The argument is a key component to multiple discourses that each articulates their own perspectives. But I think we can at least distinguish two main discourses, the socio-economic one and the educational one. The common socio-economic discourse starts from the observation that people's potential or talent is not sufficiently used. The waste of talent is regarded as an economic problem, for these talents are considered to be a key resource in today's knowledge economies. The talents that remain unnoticed or not developed pose also a social problem, for it excludes someone from participating in society, at least according to the common discourse. For this socio-economic perspective, learning is a personal process that involves the production of learning outcomes and even the production of a unique experience, as the other case of the experience of the economy would like to have put it. Just as Starbucks is not simply about selling coffee, but producing and selling a personal coffee drinking experience, it is argued that education should likewise be the production of a personal learning experience. The second, the educational discourse, to a large extent, is rooted in cognitive psychology and constructivist approaches to learning, starts from the assumption that learning is a process of knowledge production, instruction. Good education is argued takes as a point of departure the characteristics, the capacities, the specific learning needs of students. Part of this educational discourse is to criticize physical technologies for being outdated. since they bind learning to a specific time and place and rely on so-called industrial modes of classroom instruction. While past physical educational technologies are criticized for being exclusionary and fixed in time and space, new digital educational technologies are assumed to be inclusive, open, and adaptive. The students here are seen through their participation in new educational technologies, not just as users, just using the technologies, but actual co-producers of education. In a similar way as users of Google or Facebook co-produce the provided service. Notwithstanding the obvious differences between both discourses, there are some recurring elements worth underlining. First of all, in this student liberation movement, the term student does not refer to a general or abstract figure of the students, nor to new categories of students that we should take into consideration. In contrast, the starting point of these discourses is that students all differ from each other, and that education and learning should start from these differences. So in general terms, this means that the person of the student becomes the main concern. Well, this common assumptions would be formulated as follows: we are all individuals, but we are different persons, or we differ as persons in these differences. The second recurring point is that the organization of education and learning itself has questions. And of course, this is not new, but there is a great shift in how this is formulated. And the starting point today seems to be that difference between people, students, are more important than their abstract or concrete similarities. And that differences, not similarities, should be the guiding principle for the organization of education and learning. Now, in the meantime, these discourses have motivated, inspired, and also supported specific reorganization, and in my view, a new architecture of education. I'm going into detail here, but I think at least in the Flemish and Belgian context, you see how they start to organize the flexible learning paths, really start to use the learning analytics and dashboard systems in order to monitor students and give them personal feedback. Also the adaptive online learning environments that are developed not just in secondary education, higher education, but for also in higher education. So much can be said about this new architecture, and I want to limit my focus to one aspect, namely the power configuration proper to a certain architecture. The loosely drawn from goal, we describe configuration of power as a diagram that shows or expresses the architecture in its most refined, simplest, paradigmatic form. Foucault himself described two such diagrams: the synoptical diagram for theoretical power and the panoptical diagram for discipline. I think that the theoretical and the disciplinary diagram fall short in articulating power in today's normal of learning. So I think the synoptic and the key mechanisms is working with the law or a rule, this idea of submission and obedience. The panopticon, it's about the norm, disciplining people with the whole idea of normalization to norms. I think the key instrument today is not the law or the norm, but is the profile. Profile is a physical expression of certain characteristics of someone or something. Profile is an instrument that expresses something proper or special about someone in such a way that it is recognizable, in the double sense of being publicly knowable and of being acknowledged. The profile shows a social identity by using differential or determining features. In the new learning architecture, and more particularly, for instance, a learning portfolio that is, at least in the Belgian context, replacing the classic diploma, someone is not shown frontally within profile. Everything is in principle eligible for profiling as long as it also as long as it is possible to express certain distinctive or determined features. And it is of vital importance for that recognition that there is a stage or a platform on which visibility can be created. And your profile only has meaning or any reality when it has viewers that, through likes, emojis, shares, recognize and acknowledge a profile online without viewers is simply not existing. Profiling this is about visibility, to be known and recognized, that is once confirmed, it is to be acknowledged. Now we propose to use the term personalization to refer exactly to the following power mechanism. Constant attempt to search for a profile in which you are recognized by both others and both yourself. I think it's important to stress that this mechanism is different from how other power dynamics operate. While the law asks for kind of submission, also punishment, the norm asks for discipline, also correction. The profile requires constant monitoring, which means both constant measurement and evaluation, and constantly showing and making visible. And I think it is here, at that point, that feedback starts to appear as the real technique of power. So, in order to know who you are and how you continue to profile yourself, you constantly need a kind of reaction to your profile, kind of feedback loop. So instead of the need for rules or an order or the need for normality, as in the other diagrams, what is specific here is a kind of need for recognition. And these persons in need of recognition are governed by new means. They are no longer the target of normalization or the subject of legislation. The new one of governing is about manipulation, and it works to providing feedback and incentives. Its mode of operation can be illustrated by noticing how these governing mechanisms are built into online environments. And these environments today are at least partly automated, based on algorithms and learning analytics, in order to create adaptive and customized learning trajectories and increase learning efficiency for the learner. What takes shape is a kind of algorithmic governmentality that operates by creating and testing new profiles. And it's not just about profiling learners to act upon them, but also about making new profiles out of big data from online behavior, using these profiles with reasoning to modify environments and change behavior in a predicted way. So this results in a kind of digital behaviorism that does not govern by directly acting upon individuals, like social discipline, but instead steers actions and choices through anticipation by manipulating the online environment within which these actors or actions occur. So it's really the manipulation of that environment in order to govern in a particular way students. Now the paradigmatic expression or diagram of this power configuration is probably not the synoptic or the panoptic. Instead, the technique of 360 degree which source management could be an eligible candidate. So it's not a panopticon, not a theater, which is typical paradigmatic for synoptical, perhaps 360 degree feedback, where you are in the middle, or where people are gathered around you, constantly giving feedback. In one way or another, might articulates how you are connected today. And during the 360 degree feedback, the employer, as I just said, is centered in the middle of the feedback circle, around which all relevant actors from the employee's environment are situated. Managers, subordinates, but also customers, friends, and even family. So So in the ideal situation, self-evaluation of the employee coincides with the evaluation of others. Or is there another way? The ideal is that you start to look at yourself through the eyes of others. If this articulation of the 360 power diagram makes sense, it should be admitted that the common discourse about the liberation of the student from a normalizing school system only tells one part of the story. Personalized student, as a hero of present-day liberation pedagogy, coexists with a new configuration of power. Clearly, personalized student is emancipated from the normalizing school architectures. I'm not going to discuss that. But this liberation tends to forget that the need for recognition and the person wants experience that makes the student unique are both effect and instrument of a new configuration of power. And this is not to say that this need for recognition, because it is part of a power diagram, is not real. It is real in the sense that as soon as students start to understand themselves as unique persons, and start to focus on what makes them different from others, they probably will start to criticize the juridical and disciplinary powers. They start to criticize the rules and norms for not taking into account their individual uniqueness. These new students are critical, for they make and take everything personally. From the perspective of the personalized students, the norms and rules and educational institutions indeed pose a personal injustice. Norms and rules make abstraction of personal differences. So it's a logical point. And this perhaps explains why the personalized student tends to turn herself into a self-proclaimed other, showing her face and sending out an interpellation to all those that impose or who impose laws, rules, and norms. The personalized student does not ask to be treated equally, he wants or she wants to be treated differently. Perhaps the greatest tendency of the personalized student is that her future is always in some way defined by her past. The profile through which he appears as a unique person cannot, that's my point, become a person without this profile. So the profile through which he appears as a unique person, and hence the traces of her past, is at once what's determining her future possibilities. The learning, speaking of the personalized student, is traced and programmed. And Foucault would probably argue that the tendency to forget these dependencies is the consequence of what all power configurations do. That is, they make us believe it is about our freedom. It is as if the liberation from the normalizing school system unleashes an overwhelming sense of freedom that makes the operation of new power mechanisms unnoticed, if not self-evident. After all, who can be against making education a personal thing? I will nevertheless try to make this question sound less rhetorical. So I want to say a few things about school. We will argue, or I will argue, that questions can be asked about personalization when it redefines the learning of students and when it takes school out of education. And this argument runs parallel to asking questions about populism, the redefinition of votes, and how it takes democracy out of politics. What is guiding our thoughts is the parallel between democracy and school, and align with the very specific way in which Fossier approaches the issue of democracy. Fossier approaches democracy not in terms of a political regime of representation through elections, but in terms of the government of those who are not entitled to govern, the power of whoever. Democracy in this view starts from the assumption that everyone, and literally everybody, can have power to do anything. You need no prior qualification, competence, or entitlement in order to say something. This was the reason why democracy, from the very beginning of Greek antiquity, and why the ruling elites wanted to safeguard the close connection between power and qualification, was regarded as a kind of scandal. Democracy was a term used to refer to something that is to be avoided. Democracy, thus, is the name for a polemical issue, and even a scandal for what is at stake is an exercise of power under the assumption of equality. We propose to strike a parallel between democracy and school. What school means for learning is what democracy means for power. We want to use the notion of school learning, to refer to a mode of learning starting from freedom and equality. Everybody can become capable of everything. So which implies that we do not know in advance what a mind and body is capable of and what it should learn is not given. We see that as a kind of practical assumption of school learning, which is different than this kind of quality of freedom as the aim of education. It's only part of school learning. This can also be formulated as follows. School learning is based on the assumption that there is no predetermined destiny, and that school learning offers exactly time and space to find or shape one's destiny. There is to face and challenge to give form to one's life. As such, school learning reminds us that one's form of life could have been completely different. It reminds us about a radical contingency. And this is very different from the mechanisms of personalization as described earlier. And these mechanisms could be viewed as naturalizing or programming the bond between the body, the capacities, and social positions. So the new architecture of learning assumes a kind of pre-given body with defining personal characteristics that predefines the personal learning trajectory and the possible outcomes. So the power of feedback and the personal profile reinforce these bonds between capacities, bodies, and positions. And as such, the architectures of personalization take, I view, freedom in body and hence school learning altogether out of education. Now, to further make this a bit more specific what I'm trying to say, I will choose a specific way into the event of school learning. Drawing on Bruno Latour, it makes sense to start from the form of speech that is used and what he refers to as a regime of enunciation. Latour describes, for instance, the regime of enunciation of speech, religious speech, but also speech typical research and juridical. And these forms of speech all have particular performative abilities, in that they generate a particular experience, or, is drawn here on James, they generate new beginnings. About love talk, one example that Latour elaborates, it says, and I quote, "Do you love me is not assessed by the originality of the sentence, none are more banal, trivial, boring than passion, but by the transformation it generates in the listener, as well as in the speaker. Information talk is one thing, and transformation talk, is talking about transformation talk, is another." So along these lines, we can come to a kind of description of transformative power of school talk by looking forward to the level of what it does, the new beginnings that it creates. And in what follows, I will try to capture the force of school talk in a single, with in my view, paradigmatic expression. Try. The teacher is saying, try to the student. And this instructional expression, with its specific variations, should allow us to find a way into school. The expression try, and I'll elaborate that in a moment, first generates a particular experience of freedom, the freedom I'm talking about. Say try to someone, it creates a kind of freedom. Second, the variation. try again. And if you repeat it, the teacher repeats it 3, 4, 5 times, try again. Allows the students to experience certain equality. And try. This generates, in my view, a student that experience the world. So, let me say a few things about try again, try this. There are perhaps few other explanations that are used so frequently in the classroom. Try. But what does it mean to be addressed in this way, and what does it provoke? It is an order, yet at the same time an expression of concern. It expresses authority, but also contains an invitation. The phrase clearly assumes, someone is not yet able to, but foremost appeals to a becoming. The expression assumes an ability, or perhaps more strongly, when it actually permits the listener, it creates the experience of being able. One can say that someone, when accepting the invitation to try, is turned into a student, at least when becoming a student is understood in terms of experiencing an ability to do something or to begin something. The statement try seems to interrupt the chronological timeline by drawing someone into the present time. An exclamation such as try not only creates this condition of ability, it also acts upon someone's willingness. I think we all are aware of that. Also, if we have young children, it means willingness. While the invitation part of the exclamation addresses the ability, the authoritarian part is oriented towards the will. Rosier would say that the will is imposed on another one. We say, try to someone. Someone who says try to someone else is in fact willing on the other, be willing to try. The will is imposed on another one. What makes you willing, the teacher convincing, is probably the belief in the ability of the student that rings true the expression. But what exactly is the willing about? To ask someone to try something implies to ask someone to do an effort, and to engage in particular kinds of study activities or exercises. Here we might see how the expression try also has the power to transform the inhabited space. What is created is a kind of safe space, in the sense that there are no specific consequences attached to whether the effort leads to results or not. In fact, the only consequence, at least in a typical school situation, would be the invitation to try again. As a student, one inhabits a space where the efforts and activities are meaningful in themselves. In terms like practice or exercise, exactly refer to this study effort. What is at stake in school practice and exercise is hence a particular kind of freedom. And with school practice, we want to refer to this typical school work, such as reading words aloud, preparing a class presentation, learning foreign words by heart, doing body exercises or making drawings, to name just a few examples. This school work requires serious effort, but its meaning cannot be derived or defined from the outcome. Drawing of the core, but without the political and ethical connotations, and within the expression of undefined work of freedom articulates very well what is at stake. Freedom from Foucault is what shows itself in action, which involves the work, the foremost work of the self on the self. This work is undefined, in the sense that it is neither defined by an input nor by an output. School practice or exercise always has this indetermination. It is work which is undefined. This is not to say that schoolwork does not have a name. Schoolwork, writing, reading, calculation, drawing, is about creating conditions for someone to become able to write, calculate, to read, to draw. And these school-specific aims, however, are different from attempts to produce writers, mathematicians, artists, etc. Schoolwork is calling aim, and giving shape to itself, not about predetermining the actualization of these abilities, revealing the defined form or image of the subject. So this is try. Try again. I think that's equally important. And the expression try again articulates a sense of optimism. A belief in the student's ability notwithstanding someone's past. It also expresses patience. Try again is about giving someone a second chance, or even a third, a fourth chance. It means reinforcing the belief that everyone can learn everything, and intervening in order to prevent the natural social forces which impact the student might determine the student's abilities. So what the instruction try again does is to inscribe quality as a condition of schoolwork. And this equality follows from the typical freedom of schoolwork, just discussed. The social position of young people is what defines the future from the onset. This means that everybody, regardless of where they come from, who they are, must have the chance to practice and to find themselves or perform. Again, I'm not saying that you are always successful in that. I'm pointing at a kind of assumption, which is a pedagogical assumption. The equality created through the expression try again is different from the objectives of both the meritocratic strategies of equality of opportunities and the egalitarian approaches of equality of outcomes. In one way or another, these common approaches, what these common approaches do is to first make students unequal by redefining who and what they are in social and natural terms, and second, by predefining learning trajectories based on the observed natural or social necessities. I think the simple message in the act is not just a message. Try again is different. It's not to define, it's also not to redefine you as a person, it's in one way or another to undefine. Traces of someone's past are not ignored. It's not as if you are naive and there is no past. So they are not ignored, they are not forgotten. But the expression try again makes it clear that they no longer cast a shadow on someone's present abilities. So try again, and then try this. The latter expression is slightly crucial to see what school learning is about. The expression try this, one way or another, points at something outside, something not yet part of someone's life. And try also this. Try this contradicts the idea that it is only about the person, the student. It ensures that work on the self, through schoolwork, passes always through the outside. The instruction orients the students' effort towards specific schoolwork and specific subject matter. The expression assumes somehow that there is not always a natural inclination towards doing something new. Hence, intervention and serious effort is necessary. So through school learning, for example, young people are enabled to become attentive to, for instance, their mother tongue. And this provides them a kind of safe space, present moments, that makes the development of one's relation with language possible. It's not that we learn our mother tongue at school. Most of us learn it at home. But perhaps what's typical in school is that we have time and space to relate to our mother tongue, start to relate to something else. Crucial here is, in our view, the grammatization of the world disclosure, making the world available once more so that it becomes possible to establish new relationships to that world. And such a grammatization is not only about making the temporal form discrete, transforming speech into written letters and words, but also about turning a three-dimensional world into a two-dimensional flat presentation, think of the screen on the blackboard. So it makes that, it enables you that you can start to relate to something. And I think the same can be said to our digital worlds. Trying to understand what the algorithms of Google are about allows you, I think it should be kind of school matter, allows you that you can distance yourself from it and use it with care and concern, so that you are not determined what Google automatically does. So I think what's needed in school, for instance, is this privatization of the digital world. In order to be able to offer young people a chance to relate. Making grants available does not define the work of freedom. It's not define what they have to do. These grants are not defined. These are not the laws, the rules. But I think these grants are opening up possibilities. Grammars, the expression try this, constitute the meaning for freedom. Finance. So, let's come to some conclusions. So personalized learning, the related reorganization, or even mostly in the schools, take, in my view at least, the event of school out of schools. Personalized students lives or is asked to live a pre-programmed, intensified life. Feedback, recognition and acknowledgement ensure that traces of the past determine the student's future. And this student, this personalized student, will probably be ill at ease when confronted with the authoritarian invitations to try again, to try this. For that they ignore, this expression, ignore personal characteristics, past performances, and personal differences. School talk prevents making things personal and seeks to avoid that students start taking things personal, precisely in order to create a milieu to the student's ability to get a second, a chance, and to relate to the world once more. School talk indeed ignores the claim of personal justice inside compared to other, but it does so exactly for the reason, drawing on the last decade for this formulation. It does so for the reason that it wants to take care of the world in the future generation. Precisely for this reason, we think it's important to work on what we want to name kind of school studies, or future school studies. And in conclusion, I want very shortly to formulate two propositions that might be worth investigating in these studies, or at least what we think is worth investigating ourselves. So in what follows, I will bring my thoughts to the point that I start to hesitate. It also means that it's wrong in many ways. So the first proposition concerns the further exploration of the difficult, today also delicate relation between pedagogy and ethics. We have previously pointed out the possible tension between governmental rules and norms, which by definition makes abstraction of inter-individual differences in personalized students. So personalization, I think, may help to understand the increased sensitivity towards the other. It also helps to understand today the use of trigger warnings to prevent personal harm, the concern with the inclusiveness of spaces, and the building, if I look at my own university, the building of holistic support services addressing the total person of the student and assuming all sorts of vulnerability models. What is constructed is, or resembles, in my view, a kind of Levinasian universe of alternatives. It is what is constructed is an inclusive universe in which each person, insofar as profiled as a person, has a place. Along similar lines, personalization can result in social categories of class, ethnicity, and gender becoming part of profiling activities, and the focus of a person's need for recognition. At that moment, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, but also race and gender no longer belong to an individual. but become part of a person's foreground. So these categories no longer refer to what is given as a so-called social fact, being the source of solidarity, struggle, social struggle. But they are used to make someone different, and resulting in a kind of need for recognition. As soon as someone declares her alternative, an ethical claim can be made on what were previously social and, in a sense, sociological background characteristics. They become distinctive characteristics in making up the face of what I refer to as a self-proclaimed other, and can appear now as something personal in which justice must be done. And it all becomes personal for the reason, that's what I want to stress, that it has been made personal. And this profile as a person, and this construction of authority, can also initiate a discussion about whether forms of identification are appropriate or not. The result is that social, political struggles and structural conflicts may become reinscribed in the ethical register of personal justice or injustice and recognition. But the same register, that ethical register, also leads to new practices of exclusion that currently take shape in, for instance, strategies of cancelling. And these strategies always seem to imply a kind of terror that Lyotard describes as, and I quote, to deprive another of the power to respond to that deprivation. What he illustrates with a telling example of, and I quote, the child to whom his friends say that they want to play with him, and that the matter is closed. So for me, an important task in thinking about school, the future of school, is to study in depth to what extent the ethical register, including mechanisms of inclusion and exclusion, challenges or even make impossible school. The second proposal, the fifth proposition, deals with thinking about the contingency that is a result of the event of school. School and learning through school, in one way or another, involves a kind of contingency. This pedagogic contingency refers to someone's forms of life, or someone's form of life not being determined or defined by natural, historical, social forces. Who we are is not just the result of these forces, but always the possible outcome of undefined school, or at least the moment in time that we can give ourselves a shape to our lives. The school event marks that there is no predefined bond between learning capacities on one hand and the given body and social positions on the other. And this makes the school event, as I said earlier, a kind of scandal, and probably provokes resistance. And many philosophers may perhaps have trouble dealing with this point, radical contingency, or the absence of reason, reasons. In a similar way, or stressing different issues, Lyotard refers to this when he states, and I quote, "We know that a major part of philosophical reflection since Protagoras and Plato, since Protagoras, has revolved around the word building, training," which is not really an appropriate translation, but around building, and thus around, according to Lyotard, pedagogy and reform. The assumption is that the mind is not given to them as it should be and has to be reformed. Childhood is the monster of philosophers. It's also their accomplice. Childhood, according to Lyotard, tells them, philosophers, that the mind is not given, but that it is possible. So while engaging in philosophical reasoning, philosophers often assume solid ground, often implicitly assume a given state of childhood and adulthood, forgetting that what is given is merely the contingent outcome of what is possible. Now, in our view, it is, however, not enough to remind philosophy about childhood or infancy, as is done by Lyotard, perhaps also by George Proudhon. After all, this understanding of childhood hides the question, I think hides the question of what makes the possible possible, and what makes the children become able to, for instance, speak, write, count. What remains hidden, and only focused on childhood, is the question about the event of school. In that, I think not childhood, but the event of schools is the unthought of many philosophies. And at the risk of making things really personal, also for myself, I think as philosophers, we often forget that we ourselves, has been to school once. And that also we have been invited to try again and again. Thank you.